everybody, my name is Dite, and I'm going to speak about this big transition from Web2 to Web3. We already got to hear about a lot of cool games, NFTs, and stuff like that. So I will look at it a bit from the DeFi perspective, because that's kind of what I do. As Web3 is coming, it's pretty interesting because I see that probably a lot of you here are like entrepreneurs. So you're looking at like opportunities, like what next you can do, what can we build, what kind of tools can we develop. So before we get into that, a little bit about me. I started off working in crypto around 2013, and we had a company that was developing crypto startups globally from day one. We help them raise money, we help them like file for patents, build their software, and contribute to different protocols as a specialized team. Then I ended up starting two other companies named Decisio and Blockify together, and they were, here in Prague around cryptocurrencies. Afterwards, helped a few other protocols that were acquired by Fortune 500 companies by contributing to their IP and different software solutions. I'm also like a mix of technical guy and software guy. So I have an MBA, but also I'm coding every day for the last 9 years or so. And if you don't believe me, that's me in 2014 presenting at Bitcoin conference in Texas, which was one of our startups there. So let's look a little bit at the web. Web is like ever transforming. Like, I'm not so old, but I still remember when you had to like DSL and all these like dial-ups and this kind of web. And then we had like the web 2.0, which basically now everything is intermediated by web. Okay, like I came here and the guy, the tramway, he checked my Vitachka, which is like in web. You go to WeWork, you peep, it's still web. Everything we do is like goes through web somehow, and it wasn't a time before we had to go to the web, like you had to go to your computer, which was a completely different thing. In that way, the web is always transforming. The web before 5 or 10 years were so different, and we all agree that after 10 years the web is going to look so different. But the question is, like, who gets to say where it transforms to? Is it the users? Is it like the governments? Is it the academia? Who provides those answers? And if you look at Web 1, it was a lot about protocols. You have SMTPs, FTP, kind of like folders and files, ERC for chatting. There were not a lot of platforms. There was no metaverse. It was just like you had to set up your own server to do stuff. And, But the thing with the Web 1.0 is that no one wants to run their own server. Like, do you want to set up your SMTP server to send mail like they did 10 years ago? Of course not. And it is pretty slow. Like, FTP used to be very slow, the early days of torrent. So what we did as users of web, we sacrificed some freedom and sovereignty for convenience. Like, everything is fast, I can do everything with a click. And that was a great advancement for a lot of people. Now the web 2.0, the 1.0 was platformless. There was no platforms. But in 2.0, we all have these large platforms that take control, like Meta, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, Amazon. Like, everything we do in the web goes somewhere through these things. I don't know if you've seen last year, but the S3 service of Amazon was down, and it looked like the internet went down. It's like so big. And it's also so centralized. Like Jack Dorsey, well, he's not a CEO of Twitter anymore, but he could just lock you out of Twitter. And you have, little places to complain. It's very controlled. Metaverse, like Facebook, can just put an update. They don't ask their users or anyone else. Like, they just do what they want because it's their service. And also, it's owned by providers. So if I want to move my data from like WhatsApp to Gmail or somewhere else, it's difficult, almost impossible to do it. They don't let you do it because the data is theirs, is not yours. And this brings the question, about who benefits from all of this stuff. And usually it's the companies and their shareholders, okay? Meta or Facebook, they just care about their investors and reaching their bottom line. You as a user, you're kind of like on the periphery of things, okay? If you complain or something, if you're not big enough, nobody cares. And so do users have any rights? Do users have like rights for changes? I was an early user of Twitter, and as I love the company, they never gave me anything, never gave me any stock. If you're lucky, they'll give you a t-shirt or something like that. So that means, I don't want to scare you guys, but technology can be evil. Anytime you have a high concentration of power in a few people, what happens is that they can get corrupt and they can use this power elsewhere. Now, I'm sure all of us here are good guys, but imagine yourself in Zuckerberg's shoes. Okay, you have all this power, all these algorithms. You can decide whose business goes up, whose goes down, which political candidate goes up. It's a lot of power, you know? It's a matter of time before it can get corrupt, and it does in many cases. Then you have the big data powered algorithms, which actually are currently powering the lives of many people. Like Amazon has an algorithm that they choose who to fire with. And these are like policies. But usually policies are transparent and everyone knows what to do with them, right? But these are non-transparent. You as a user, you are not aware of what can get you banned from Twitter, and it can change all the time. Now, this benefits who, and who pays the cost of all of these things is something to look into. Personally, I believe that Web2, things like Twitter, email, etc., they all belong to infrastructure. So they should be designated as infrastructure. They were very innovative 10 years ago, but today it's not so hard to spin off a Twitter copy. So let's look at Web 2.0, okay? It's decentralized pretty much. You own all your data. You have a lot of power with what you share, with what you give to people. You are controlled by protocol rules. Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of these, they have a lot of issues, obviously, but the rule is the rule, and it's written in code, and anyone can see it, and it's transparent. Secondly, is they are a lot of time owned by early users. You know, you look at Bitcoin, who mined the first Bitcoin, it was like the people who were there first. So they own a piece of the protocol. And the same is with a lot of the Web3 protocols that we currently have. It's pretty much the most open thing that we can have. If I look at an example of what I did yesterday, is that I can take a crypto loan using our protocol, which doesn't have people, I just do it myself automatically. And then I can go and buy fractional ownership in real estate in different places around the world. One of them is OceanProtocol, which I currently work for. The other one is like the DIAData Oracle company. So you can buy fractional real estate, and this is something that I'm really excited about. And then I can collect a share of rent every month, and I can even go and put my savings in a protocol like Yearn and get like returns by providing even liquidity in like Curve or Uniswap or all these things with just a few clicks without having to get permission from anybody. My money, my rules in a way. On top of that, you have airdrops. You know, who received an airdrop this year? Last year, anybody got that UNE, some of that ENS. These protocols, they reward you for being an early user. I was using Slack when nobody was using it in the early days. It was really buggy. And Slack didn't give me anything. Uniswap, on the other hand, sent me a big, hefty token bag that I love so much. You can use these airdrops to vote in DAOs, to make decision on where the protocol is going through. It's kind of like Starbucks would give the first people who bought the coffee when they started a part of their IPO offering. It's pretty cool, but it doesn't happen in the real world, only on the Web 3.0. This is a DAO example voting. I think it's from ENS. And basically, community comes along, and vote on a proposal to, for example, set the price of domains to $10,000. And the community decides, the owners, the token people. There's no group of 5, 6 people making all the decisions up. In this case, the law is code. What you see is what you get, and the code is connected to the DAO, and the DAO voting power is transparently connected to the token holders, and it all works. There's no way to trick it, and ownership is direct, and everything is more aligned, I think, than the other ecosystems. So let's look at some of the threats and opportunities for Web 3.0. Personally, I think a lot of venture capital and decentralized finance is not a good thing. I think they have their place in the ecosystem, like a slice of it. But if they try to take power from the communities in a way, I don't think it would lead so well, because you have the interests of the users and interests of the investors going on different sides, and that can't help the bottom line of the protocol. There's a lot of shady practices around DeFi, a lot of scams or half scams, a lot of foul play. Law enforcement is catching up on how to track these things, but there's still a good amount of foul play. The other issue is speed of execution. You know, we've been waiting, for example, for Ethereum 3.0 forever. And the reason is that decentralized software is so hard to coordinate. When you have a lot of people, they got to vote, everybody has to agree. So it's kind of like a very slow, and this is a threat to the Web 3.0. Now, I don't mean we should decentralize everything, but it is something to keep in mind as we're building the other threat. The final one, I would say, is the interface issues. If you guys ever use them in DeFi and dApp, you know how difficult it is to use. Even experienced users have trouble. And for me, I have what I call the dad test. Is the test where I give an app to my dad, and if he can use it, then it passes the dad test. I would be so scared to give my dad a MetaMask. You know, that money is definitely going to end up in some hackerspace. So that's something that we have to fix in the decentralized finance. If you look at this is like a chart of the funds locked in the Curve protocol, pretty famous protocol. There's like 15 billion USD, there's millions of ETH, a lot of money, like billions and billions of value. And then you look at the Curve interface, it's like Windows 95 was a bit sexier. Now, you know, Curve is like a protocol you don't want everybody to use, but the DeFi protocols, they kind of look similar, you know. Which doesn't make the case for it very well. So that means that we have a lot of opportunities here. It's kind of like the early stage of internet. You know, we need interfaces, applications, ways to make it seamless, ways to manage the keys that get lost all the time. And, you know, this will handle a lot of experimentation and, of course, a lot of failure along the way, because it's a very experimental field. And I think there's a lot of space for startups and entrepreneurs, like a lot of you in the audience, to build these infrastructures a piece at a time, a startup at a time, a hackathon at a time, so we make the DeFi world and the Web 3.0 like a seamless experience, the same way you use the other one. Another option with Web 3.0 is that before, on the 2.0 internet, everybody was scared to put their credit cards online. It was kind of like, I will search the web, but I'm not putting my card. And then somehow with the e-banking and everything, somehow it happened, we all put the credit cards. Now on the Web 3.0, when you're building something, your audience is global. And they don't only look at what you build, they also have tokens. They can buy your tokens, they can sell your tokens. You are building for a global finance audience, which has never been tried before in such a way. So it's a pretty exciting time to build the 3.0. I don't know if that was too quick, but I'm pretty excited about Web 3.0. I'm, you know, let me know if you have any questions, and let's build this together. Thank you.
I will ask again, when you see the major adoption of the Web3 zone?
I think it all depends on the tools. You know, we have a bit of a bump now. There's a bit of regulatory changes the last few months. It looks like some countries are banning mining every few months. But right now, I think we're at the stage where everybody heard of the decentralized finance. Everybody heard of crypto. Also, not everybody used it. I think the next shift is going to be like we're going to have like a hotmail of crypto. So someone's going to do something that people can just go and like do it, and I think that would bump it up. And to some certain extent, Coinbase and the others have done that. To be honest, I'm not such a big visionary to know exactly where it would be, but let's give it another 7 years or something. That'll be fine, I think. I don't know. Yes. Yeah, it's not a very good solution. I agree with you. It's if Infura is down, it's kind of like Amazon is down. If you can't reach your node, but the difference is that you can theoretically submit stuff to a different node if you wanted to, which is not the case with like Amazon. When Amazon is down, like the Amazon is down. You can't just go and do that stuff. But as you said, I think that's like a threat, but also like an opportunity. You get a lot of chances to build like a more decentralized indexing layer, decentralized Etherscan, decentralized all of these things. I think could be, and for a period of time when we make the hop, that centralization I think is necessary for a very short period of time.
Peter, maybe one question for me.
Yes.
You were talking about all the ways how we can get to Web3. How does the identity look for you? What is your identity? How do you imagine it? Similar. Yes.
Yeah. So thanks for that. Well, I'm pretty much like a techie guy in coding. So my identity is like the private key, you know. Definitely is not gonna work for everyone. But I think we will have something like combined offline and offline identity, where you have like a piece there and here. And one thing that I'm pretty excited about that also Vitalik mentioned a lot is the whole social recovery, right? So I trust you as a person, let's say like you're a friend or a cousin or something, and I can share, I can give you the right to help me if I lose my keys or something like that. And then in that way, we will have more like fluid identities. There's a whole space of avatars and NFTs and like metaverse and all that stuff, but I think the speakers before spoke about that much better than I can.
One more question.
But there's this big problem in DAOs in general where, you know, as you said earlier, the speed is just too slow with the decision making, with updates coming in. One way to fix that, of course, could be centralization, but it creates so many other problems we don't really want that. So I've been struggling with that for quite a while because I'm in quite a few DAOs. I've been pretty active in some early projects as well. Not early projects, but early in some project. And I've been really struggling with thinking about how to speed these things up. I think a good example actually of how slow it can be is if you know anything about Tezos now, there was the latest upgrade. Okay, it was an upgrade protocol wanting to be injected, so they voted for it, but I think they didn't get the supermajority of 80%, they only got about 70 or something like that. And so it wasn't put in, and now they have to wait for another cycle to inspect it again, and it's very slow, it's very tedious. Things work, things change, things get upgraded, but at a pace where if you did have a centralized authority, it would be at least 2 to 3 or 4 times quicker, which is why I'm a bit scared about centralized figures like in this case Meta or Microsoft, you know, coming in and just sweeping the whole market because they're just faster at creating and updating than any decentralized entity could be. So I've been really struggling with thinking what could be a solution to that? How could we speed things up?
Yeah, I think this is a very good thing, and this is like the question of like, let's say, you know, the Chinese model or the American model. Like, if you know, just looking at the real world, like in China, 4 or 5 people get together, they make a decision, it's happens, right? US or other countries, they have parliaments. It takes like a whole year to do everything, and it's just so slow, and it's frustrating sometimes. So I agree with you. But the thing is that these are the layer zeros that we're building, like Tezos, Ethereum, etc. And I think the way things will work is first people are going to get more educated about how these processes work and like get with the flow. The second thing is that we are going to get some fundamental issues solved in these layers, like you have Ethereum 2.0, burning fees, all of these like core decisions. And once these are done, then the layer 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., they can be more centralized, and that's essentially okay. It's like you have the central banks in the real world, but then you have like MasterCard like up, a few layers that allows for quicker settlement. And in that way, as long as zero layer, the first one are kind of more decentralized, the rest of them can be more centralized, and I think it will work that way moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe one more question regarding of all we have discussed. It seems like whenever we go further and further in the roadmap of projects, you start to happen to get coins for interacting. It starts to happen and these governance rights and everything. Do you think there will be like a parallel economic system, like maybe even citizenship level? Where do you see? How far can you see that? Like, is it going to be a different citizenship and a different world, or it's more like an upper level of what we have?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, maybe what we will see is like more rights that we have on our actual life, like citizenship, travel rights, even things like land registry on Catastro, stuff like that. Maybe that will get more like digitized. And then imagine if you have like a token of your apartment and all of his history, and you lock that token in other protocol and you get like an instant loan or instant mortgage, something like that. Or you travel somewhere and you literally like have like a zero knowledge scan. Okay, I'm checked. You can get in, something like that. I think these are like very cool, and the tech is already there. The governments, they're a bit scared to play around with these things. Without here in Europe, the European Central Bank says something, and then everybody else is like, yeah, that's what we will do too. So let's see. I'm not so optimistic for the governments. They're very, very slow.
I heard recently that the actual European law is not even thinking about ownership of digital assets. So I was questioning myself. I was like, do I own these NFTs that I have, or I don't? Because I'm European.
It was all a dream, as good as it lasted. Yeah.
How do you think we can convince governments that Web3 is safe enough for the society? And that, like, for example, it was mentioned Twitter, that someone can delete it from Twitter. And that's actually the government can use. Like, for example, you have a Nazi group of people or something, so the government can just ban it. And they sort of think maybe they feel that insecurity. This also right regarding many aspects. So what is your opinion on how we can basically convince government that it's safe enough, and what are the tools for governments to at least adjust super decentralized payment to benefit both sides?
Yeah, no, exactly. The governments will always want their hook on stuff. It's like the central bank of I've advised a few central banks, and they always want to have like a backdoor. Like, what if I want to cancel this transfer, or what if I want to ban this account? And I think there's no way around that. We can only like digitize that. So, for example, the central bank, let's say in financial system, can have a smart contract that handles all these things. But where the beauty comes in is this: there's a law that we have in every country, and this law, if you translate that into like a smart contract for the central bank, then you are sure that people will not be misusing that power. So, for example, the central bank cannot ban someone just because they think or suspect something as it has happened in the past, but they have now like a law that is written in the code, and even though they have the power, they can still be very like clear on how they do that, transparent with an audit trail and everything else. So in some way, we shouldn't be like fighting with the governments in a way, because they will they will always have their way, but we should allow them to have their power, which is given to them by the sovereignty of the people who vote them. So that would benefit us and also them to keep things, clear and safe.
All right. One more question, last question, if somebody has.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.